All right, good afternoon. Now we're going to be talking about the 15th bracha of Shemona Esrei, and that is Tzemach David. Tzemach David, the bracha of David, even though David HaMelech appears in the bracha of Yerushalayim, but he gets its own bracha here as well. So let's try to figure out what are we actually davening for in this bracha, and which one of man's needs is this coming to address? So if we look at the theme of this bracha, we'll see that the theme is the first line says it's Tzemach David, and we use the word Tzatzmiach, which Tzemach is the plant of David, it's Tzemach David, and here Tzatzmiach means that it should grow. The second line we say Keren David, right? The horn of David, Karnoi Tarim Mishuasecha, David's horn. So these are two metaphors that are joined together in the Chasima, which says Matzmiach Keren Yeshua. So let's try to examine this concept of tzemach, and maybe we'll be able to try to tie in the concept of a keren as well when we go through this bracha. So if we go through Tanakh, in Yecheskel, in Yirmiyah, in Tehillim, the appearance of the word tzemach is almost always means growing in a metaphorical sense, as opposed to vegetation, for example. And whenever it's mentioned, it refers to the Yeshua, the salvation of Hashem, and the coming of Mashiach ben David. In fact, one of the names of Mashiach is Tzemach, like it says in Zechariah. So that's, first of all, Tzemach is again a lashon of growing, and it referring to the salvation of Hashem with Mashiach ben David. So with that in mind, let's try to just give an example. In general, we, as human beings, we judge certain things in absolute values. So, for example, the classic case of a student who gets a 90 on a test and another student who gets a 70 on a test, the student who got the 90 gets a better absolute value. But, of course, we know that in students, that's not how things work. There's much more that goes into it. So, for example, the kid who got a 90 every time, if he gets a 90 the whole year and he keeps getting 90s, so fine, in absolute value is better. But what about if the kid went from getting 50s to getting a 70? So he grew in that case from a 50 to a 70. So there, that student has a value that the student who got a 90 can never attain. So that's another type of value altogether. Appreciating progress is appreciating the value of a process of movement. That's a different type of appreciation than we find when you're just comparing two absolute values. The Zohar, my Rabbi Zucker mentions this often. The Zohar expresses this distinction in comparison between malachim, who are called oimdim, they just stand, they have a job to do and they do it, and human beings who are mahalchim, they're walkers, they're goers, they're doers, they try to grow. So obviously, malachim are on a higher absolute value than human beings. They're worth more, quote unquote, but that's just an absolute evaluation. But people have a value that even the highest malach can never get to, and that's the value of being a mahalech, of moving. The fact that man is moving toward a higher goal, even though his end target can't be as high as a malach's perhaps, but that gives him a value, a type of value that malachim cannot attain no matter what. In fact, Jewish history begins with the commandment, Lech Lecha, go. Hashem tells Avraham, go for yourself. And Avram Avinu, who's the father of our religion, is constantly referred to. He's a hoylech, a mishalech, haloich v'nosea, eshalech lefanai ve'yesamim, walk before me and be perfect. Avram's perfection doesn't come in an absolute value of perfection. That's not what it is. That only the Rebbeinu Shalom can have. What it means is his tamimos. Avram's state of perfection is in the fact that he is eshalech lefanai, he walks before me. He goes, he does. His perfection is found in the process of perfecting, in walking before the Rebbeinu Shalom. So tzemach, in this case, in our bracha, this is it refers to the value of process. When we ask for salvation, we're not asking for a particular state. We're not asking like for wealth or health. We ask for a certain amount. Give me enough parnasa that I could live. Give me health that I could have enough health to live. No, we're not asking for that here. We're asking for salvation. We're not asking for a particular quantity. We're asking for tzemach. We're asking for growth. We dive into the Rebbeinu Shalom to cause the plant of salvation to grow, to reach upward, to rise like the keren, like the horns of the ram that rise up from the animal. That's what we're asking, to become part of the process, to become part of that infinite walk toward the Rebbeinu Shalom, to become partners in the perfection of Avram Avinu, who walked before Hashem. Now, why is David mentioned here? I'll quickly end. David HaMelech is mentioned. Melech David is mentioned over here. David HaMelech, because we know that David HaMelech, the Gemara in Sanhedrin tells us that he asked to be tested, to undergo an ordeal like those of the Avos. And the Gemara learns from this incident that you should never ask to be tested, and we should never ask the Rebbeinu Shalom to test us. Very important. The Gemara tells us, never ask the Rebbeinu Shalom to be tested, because we don't know if we're going to be able to withstand it. So we learn from David HaMelech not to do that. However, despite his failure, he does merit to have a bracha named after him in Shemona Esrei, just like the Avos. So why is that? Because in his request to be tested, David, he wasn't really asking to be tested, he was seeking growth. Because an avenue for growth is when a person is tested. And again, I can't emphasize this enough, we should never ask the Rebbeinu Shalom to be tested. But when a test comes, when inevitably tests come our way, that is an avenue for us to be able to grow and to flourish. And that's what David HaMelech was seeking. And that's why it's a Tzemach David. So when we daven, we should have in mind to ask the Rebbeinu Shalom to help me grow and go before the Rebbeinu Shalom in that way.